Reddit asks, what is a country you will never visit again? Venezuela. If I managed to get out of there, I would never look back. Venezuela is the true experience of how ed up your barometer for what constitutes a problem becomes. You literally end up thinking that eating 3 times a day, earning enough to buy just the basics, and having utilities not fail for just one day, if you even get them at all, is first world. India. I hated my visit to India, but the people there were very kind and welcoming. The food was amazing. The reason I hated it was because, at that time, I had never been exposed to such abject poverty and such massive overcrowding, trash, and smoke everywhere. It saddened me. Everyone I know who has visited India has gotten sick. Everyone, without exception, has suffered terrible food poisoning. Many have said that India isn't worth the illness you'll likely be exposed to. A few years ago, a friend traveled to Japan and South Korea. In both countries, he encountered the same problem. Nobody likes or respects people of color. He is a tall, attractive man, a good speaker of both languages, but has very dark skin. Many times, he went into restaurants only to be totally ignored until he left without being served. Same attitude in other businesses, lots of mockery and insults. I wouldn't visit my own country if I could get out of it. I live in Venezuela, and I'm tired of having no possibilities to do anything because inflation screwed everything up. Going out on the street and seeing so much poverty, sleeping without electricity, never having gasoline, and hearing how my family loses running water or has appliances burn out due to power surges. My acquaintances are abused by authority figures like the police, and they rob more than any thug. Besides that, although we are considered warm people, a large part of the adults are insensitive people who accept behaviors like sexism. We are champions at bullying with the excuse that it's just a joke, and a large part of our population has some untreated trauma from abuses they suffered as children. There is nothing that makes me wish to stay here other than my family. They have destroyed everything, and now people on social media with income try to hide our reality saying that we are getting better on social media. Disgusting. In Mexico, if you go to a beach, never leave the tourist zone. If you visit a capital city, generally you won't have problems. Most people are kind and will help you with practically anything. If you are black, it won't happen that a child says, "Look mom, a little black person." If you go to Mexico City in the downtown area or a working-class neighborhood, people will almost certainly stare at you. Don't take it the wrong way. They see you as different or think you're preppy. They will be just as kind as anywhere else in the country. However, take a few days to adapt to the food. If you are a tall, white woman, do not get on public transport alone in Mexico City. Well, I wouldn't go back to South Korea to live, maybe just for dermatological treatment since they are very good, or a short vacation, but other than that, no. They are too xenophobic, racist, classist, sexist, and superficial. Many people there have normalized this greatly. And even if you are white, if you come from a poor country, that is already a reason to discriminate. Just as they don't have a good image of Russia even though they are white, don't even get me started on countries like Thailand, Vietnam, the Philippines, etc. I mentioned something about one of these countries to a Korean friend, and she made a face like, the countries there are very poor. And since I'm from Mexico, she told me, better say you're from Spain. Mexico has a bad image. There are also good and very kind people, but many people have normalized these things. Paraguay. I am Paraguayan with all my heart and I love my country as such. To come as a tourist, I would say it's highly recommended. The hospitality is enormous, and the people are very kind and affectionate. But seriously, I do not recommend coming to stay here to build your life. Latin American countries for the most part, not all, have a very unstable economy. My country is not saved from this. Getting a job is difficult, and the salary is not very high. If you are going to go to Paraguay, I recommend going only as a tourist to look around, because staying to make your life there will be something very complicated. The only country I've visited because I don't live there, the United States. Everyone says it's very pretty, but the truth is it's incredibly cutting. The atmosphere isn't pleasant, everything is absurdly expensive, and medical service is a guaranteed bankruptcy, plus there is a lot of violence. We already know about the shootings, but there are still a lot of racist, addicted, and grumpy people. And if we add to that the gun handling policy, where you can buy whatever at Walmart, it's simply a vital or economic elimination, and people drive extremely fast. Motorcyclists aren't required to wear helmets and they tune their bikes in such an impractical way that they make mobility very difficult. Apart from the fact that cars going so fast also means you have to have very good reflexes. Once a truck almost crashed into us when trying to brake. If a gap hadn't opened up in the other lane and my uncle hadn't been able to react, we would have ended up right there, so car accidents are daily bread. With all respect to the beautiful and incredible people of Colombia, Cartagena de Indias is a city that I would think twice about returning to, and not precisely because of the Caribbean beaches, but the suffocating experience towards the tourist. There hasn't been a place where I've had to shake my head, no, so much to make it clear I'm not interested in anything. Walking through the historic center was torture. The guys who do hip-hop who chase and stun you. The vendors of things who walk next to you harassing you for a whole block. The parade of street vendors on the public beaches of Boca Grande and surroundings, the vendors on the streets offering you tours. I could go on, but it really saddens me a lot. It was very suffocating. My country, Nicaragua, is a beautiful country with lakes, mountains, valleys, and a great variety of climates, biomes, ethnicities, cultures, and so many positive things that many go illegally to the United States to return and retire. Although it is very probable that you lose your life on the way to the US or be exploited for labor or be deported. Many people therefore prefer to stay here and not risk dying. This country has experienced 4 migration crises, and if you earn more than $1,000, you have to pay 30% of your salary in taxes without any kind of benefits. In Europe, you pay 40% in taxes, but you have the right to free and quality public education, high-quality public services, security, and so many things that paying taxes is more a pleasure than a responsibility. This got so bad that second-grade children are already seeing what the causes and consequences of migration are. Additionally, we have the same case as Venezuela, socialism. My mother says that they confiscated my grandfather's land, livestock, and other things. And when he managed to stabilize again, he saw the police in the distance and literally threw everything into the river so they wouldn't grab it. And my father has a brother who joined the army because my uncle isn't the brightest person. And when his comrades in arms wanted to come and bring him back, these guys beat my grandmother until my uncle went back to the war. This in front of my grandfather and my father and his brothers. If my country is this bad, you can't imagine how the situation is in El Salvador or Honduras. Let's not even talk about Guatemala. My father says inequality hits you like a truck. Living in Latin America, perhaps people find the opinion that countries like China and Japan have towards tourists very extreme. I say this because here in Mexico there is an incredibly vast variety of people, from short and tall, fat and skinny, whites as white as the color itself, blacks as black as coal, a mixture with different features all over the body. But in countries like Japan, the variety is small, all almond-eyed, mostly thin, yellowish white, they are all of one form. That immense variety of people doesn't exist like in countries over here. That's why discrimination is something very marked there. I don't justify it, but it is normal to be afraid of or dislike something that doesn't fit into your standard of commonality, and the people there, at least the older ones, are extremely conservative. Therefore, let's hope that thanks to the great globalization the world is having, people in countries like that start to open up more to people different from them, at least Japan, because I am a brown Latino anime fan and I would like to visit Japan sometime, the otaku dream, and I would like to visit it without being received like a monstrosity with legs. Egypt. Cairo looks like a war zone. Turrets on the corners, tanks, soldiers with automatic weapons everywhere. We had an armed police officer on the tour bus, and I have nothing against them. They are excellent company for travel, police escort everywhere, sniffer dogs, and a guy with a mirror looking for explosive devices under the bus. Cairo is dirty, full of trash, and the poverty is alarming. The food was average at best, since we couldn't leave the hotel or the tourist path to eat. It was suffocatingly hot. The camel drivers at the pyramids were mean to the women and the animals, and there were also children working there. The Egyptian museum was an embarrassment to the country, poorly organized, defective labels, no security. Priceless fabrics, scrolls, leather, etc., cluttered in display cases exposed to the air, heat, and hands. Without air conditioning, the only thing well cared for and secure were Tutankhamun's objects. It is a spectacular resource and collection, and it is very poorly cared for and without any kind of conservation. The new one just opened. I hope it's better. Once you've seen one temple, one hieroglyph, you've seen them all. Everything revolves around tourist money, and the street vendors were relentless and scary. Even on a nice boat ride on the Nile, children paddled up to the boat on wooden doors, selling trinkets or simply begging. Never again. In my case, I would say Venezuela. I lived there for 3 years, and truthfully, they treated my family very badly. They discriminated against us a lot. We were in Caracas, and we are from Bogotá, Colombia. We are too white, and I admit my mother has European features and I have Asian ones. The people we saw on the streets were clearly brown or dark-skinned. Truthfully, I didn't see anything wrong with that, but the other kids made fun of me and hated me. I think they were also envious of me because I was the one with the best academic performance despite being new. Something very complicated was the food, and that was from 2006 to 2009. My best friend is from Barinas, Venezuela, and he tells me the situation is getting worse and worse, although I admit the food was better, even though you could hardly get it. I don't know if anyone has seen a Spanish YouTuber who goes by motorcycle all over South Africa and surrounding parts. It's a bit sad to see how people live and how the authority, instead of protecting, uses vehicle checkpoints to take money from you or otherwise threaten you. All the sites end up being towns that have very few things and resources, and the main cities or those shown end up being a bit chaotic. In a certain way, it reminds me of Latin America, but well, I don't deny that like everything, there will be good people, nice places, beaches you can visit, but you have to go very alert. Actually, most of the countries here deserve to be visited. They just scare with their power and their laws. I myself am from Russia. We have really beautiful nature and architecture, plus many good and understanding people. I just hope that one day my country will be free. Turkey. I arrived fascinated with the idea of the Bosphorus, the mosques, the bazaars. The first hours were a dream, colors, aromas, architecture, but then came the crash. Vendors who followed you for half a block, taxis that charged you double, hotels that looked nothing like the photos. I tried to enjoy it anyway until a guy put his hand in my pocket at a market. He didn't steal anything, but he ruined the rest of the trip. I realized I spent more time watching my wallet than admiring the scenery. I left with the feeling that everything was beautiful, but nothing was sincere. A place can be incredible and exhaust you at the same time. Spain. I've been visiting it for 14 years because I was born in Spain. I know how they treat foreigners. We are getting worse and worse, and in exchange for lowering taxes, they raise them, and most people have pay lower than what is necessary to live. You can't last a month without 1,000 euros, and not all jobs give that much money, which makes it very difficult to find a good job or even one at all. It's not as bad as others in this video, but that doesn't take away from it being garbage where they say it's good because a person decided to put the first world stamp on it. I hate Spain, and when I can leave, I will. Japan. I am overweight. I am black and not pretty at all. Older people spat on me. No one sat next to me on the train or painfully made it clear they felt uncomfortable during rush hour. Young people, adults, teenagers, and older children had no filter and laughed. They made faces or even threw things at me, although that was only in Shibuya. It was hard for me to get a job as a teacher, even with my training and credentials, because I had to have my photo, and no one wanted a black, ugly teacher. I felt like a monster the whole time, and I shut myself away little by little until I quit my jobs and only went out at night to buy food at a convenience store. The last time I went out during the day in Japan was to cancel my cell phone plan before leaving, and there, children and teenagers pointed at me and laughed before running away screaming that I was a monster. It mortified me when the adults looked at me and I could hear them say, "Well, look at her." It took me 4 months to return home and leave my apartment during the day in the United States. I didn't go thinking they would love me, I just thought I would have a good experience in my 20s. Japan is a modern and beautiful country with wonderful people, but I simply wasn't lucky enough to meet them. What bothers me most is that when I mention this, people say, "Oh, Japan treated me great. You must have done something wrong." I'm glad you had a good time. I hope the next person also has a good time, but this was my experience, that's all. I can say that it's scary to live in Colombia, but it's what I have to deal with for now. Where I lived before, I never had to worry about strange men, except, of course, if I was alone with them. But since I've lived here, God, I live thinking something bad is going to happen to me. And no, I'm not a knockout, nor am I super pretty. I've seen and heard them even say incredibly obscene things to chubby, pregnant women, etc. But the weird thing is that if they see one who is barely dressed, they just limit themselves to looking at her. I don't know the reason, but those types of men make living here scary. And don't throw hate at me. I am aware that harassment is something that is experienced everywhere, it's just that where I come from, that had never happened to me. Guatemala. I went on a mission trip a long time ago when I was still religious, and we stayed at an orphanage. The crime rate was extremely high, especially in our area. The plumbing was mediocre, the usual problems. The truly disturbing thing was the orphanage itself. The children were lovely, but those who ran it always made my hair stand on end. The manager was an American in his 70s, a fundamentalist Christian who often ranted about how lesbians and homosexuals didn't exist in his time and how they were ruining the world's morals. He also mentioned how he used to give things to his wife against her will whenever something bad happened, like when she lost 2 of her children shortly after giving birth, so she wouldn't have to suffer. He also used the children from the orphanage to work in his house, which was basically a mansion on the orphanage property, which was comparatively pitiful, and they were basically a source of unpaid labor for him and his wife. It turns out that currently, the orphanage is being investigated by the Guatemalan government for being a massive center of harm against minors. Egypt. I visited in 2015. The hotel zone was incredible, and you felt like a king, but nothing more. As soon as you leave the hotel zone, you feel like you're in a war zone. Trash everywhere, roads in bad condition, nothing to see outside the hotel. I didn't feel good there. Every time I went to buy water at a store, the price went up every day. They told you a price, often double or triple what you had paid the day before, and you had to haggle. In the end, I said I would pay a certain amount and no more. When they said no, I left the store, and they chased me. It was stressful being there. If I wanted to enjoy myself, I would stay in my hotel room, the pool, or the beach, ignoring the people trying to sell me things on the beach. I was the only one in the group of 5 who didn't enjoy it, but I don't see the fun in having to haggle all day and having seen it all after the second day. Haiti. I went on a medical mission. We spent a day at the beach. We were caught in the middle of a protest. I was groped, and several people were beaten. It was terrifying. They only stopped when one of our translators shouted that we were medical personnel. In the end, we only spent an hour at the beach so we wouldn't have to return through the same area at night. Upon arrival, there was no one. Some overturned vehicles were on fire. A UN detachment was in a large armored vehicle with a huge cannon on top. I can't imagine how terrible it must be now with all the civil unrest. I grew up and lived in South Africa and was lucky enough to emigrate to the United States. Although the country has many things I love, if I never had to go back, it wouldn't bother me at all. We still have family there, so we go back to visit. The problem isn't that it's not an interesting and beautiful country, but that the people who leave have adapted to an excessive level of crime and violence. Things like avoiding areas completely, not walking at night, trying to avoid stoplights, living in a secure complex, having electric fences and private security are examples of everyday life in South Africa. If you live abroad, it is likely that all these concepts are very strange to you. I spent more than 2 months in Panama recently, and honestly, I don't think I'll return. First, I was in downtown Panama, which has its good qualities in terms of easy access to services, but it is very crowded and a bit chaotic. Then I moved to a small coastal town, and the beach was beautiful, but that was it, and the road infrastructure was a disaster. So after a few visits to the beach, you realize that when the weekend arrives, all the locals from downtown flood this quiet town, and it becomes chaotic again. In fact, I cut my stay short by 2 weeks because I simply couldn't stand the Groundhog Day feeling that every day is the same, and I just missed my home. I must say the people are very kind, but it is essential to speak Spanish fluently. Google Translate has its limits. Jamaica. We went on a quiet vacation with my girlfriend, who was in college then, and we were very disappointed that we were asked if we wanted to buy magic green plant every 20 steps. Despite popular belief, it was quite illegal in Jamaica back then. I consumed occasionally at home in the United States, but on this trip, I didn't feel like it, and I didn't want to risk getting arrested abroad. 3 days later, they were wearing us down, so we considered buying. That same day, a tour guide on our river tour warned us, without prompting, that some guys would sell to you and then cross the street to alert the police in exchange for a commission, after which you would be put in a Jamaican jail and have to bribe your way out. As an Egyptian woman, I want to say, first of all, I feel 1000% sorry for every human being who has been a victim of anyone in Egypt. On behalf of Egyptian women around the world, thank you for sharing your stories. Your stories are our stories. These things happen to us all the time, but the women here are desensitized or are condemned for speaking out. We try to communicate with the outside world about women's rights, the culture of harassment, but the language barrier, both spoken and written, makes it very difficult for our stories to be known. Egypt needs this harsh news. Tourism will suffer, and they cannot afford for that to happen. We need to take responsibility and make drastic changes. Morocco. Dealing with aggressive street vendors became exhausting, in addition to having to politely tell strange men to stop trying to buy my sister from me or insulting her when she didn't buy anything or rejected their advances. I felt generally uncomfortable almost everywhere. I'm glad I went, but once is enough. I've heard Egypt is much worse, so for me, all of North Africa is ruled out. Moldova. I was held at passport control for hours because they found it suspicious that a brown-skinned person was an Irish citizen. Mind you, I was only there for 2 days, so that ruined my itinerary. They are trying to boost the tourism sector, but they will have to get used to people of all kinds having all kinds of passports. After living in Spain for 6 years, it is undoubtedly my vote. I got extremely tired of the Spanish work ethic. It seemed like every 2 weeks they closed something because everyone was on strike or on vacation. Any government-related matter took months or years to get done, even things as simple as signing a document. They also blame tourists for everything bad in their country and have defeatist personalities. It was common to hear them say, rent is high because of tourist apartments. Jobs are limited in most cities, or, political party X is corrupt, but I'm still going to vote for them because it's always been that way, etc. The food is quite good, though, and there are good hiking trails. The beer is terrible. I have traveled all over the world, and India is probably my favorite place and where I will always return. That said, I expected it to be the best option, and rightly so. It simply isn't for everyone. It can be a very difficult place to traverse or simply be. However, for some people, whatever the cost, it is rewarded amply. It is a wonderful, rewarding, and immensely vast culture to explore. It will test you, it will absorb you, and then it will return you, but in the end, you can break through, and often they will bring you to understand a completely new universe. It is beautiful. Ghana. I spent 3 months working there. It was quite pleasant, but I think I saw almost everything I wanted. And for being a relatively prosperous African nation, it was still very difficult to get around, etc. However, Accra is pleasant for an African city and the people are very kind, so I guess I wouldn't go back since there are other places I would prefer to go. The food in Morocco is quite good, but outside of that, I experienced the annoying vendors, and the worst was the harassment I suffered. At least as a woman, you can't go out on the street without the company of a man. Or even if you are and you are dressed in pants and long sleeves as I was at that moment. You aren't saved from the stares, the insults, and even outright how they approach trying to grope you. I was lucky that I was with a group and the guide, but, I wouldn't go back there even if it were free. I never lived with so much fear. If those are the most civilized and suitable places for tourists, or at least that's how they sold it to us, I don't want to imagine those that aren't. Listening to the stories about Egypt, it is quite similar. I have traveled to more than 15 countries, and Egypt was the first that came to mind when I saw the title. A kind man who was sitting next to me on a bus heading to Cairo received a beating from the police at the Suez Canal checkpoint. They literally punched him in the face with all their might while he was sitting next to me, begging them to stop until they dragged him away, probably never to be seen again. It's like they criticize Morocco for beggars or their annoying bargaining tactics. But in Morocco, at least, I never feared for my safety or that of my group. You can travel through that country relatively freely and have a pretty good time if you go to the right places and have a pretty bad time if you go to the wrong ones. Egypt crosses a totally different line, especially given the fact that it is still considered a tourist destination and is not grouped with countries in conflict. I would definitely say it should be considered more broadly and grouped closer to those. The pyramids area was absolutely disgusting. So many people there to scam you, camels in bad condition, small children crawling among piles of trash. If you are a woman or have a woman in your group, it is even worse. It is impossible to stay out after sunset, as the level of danger and suspicion rises to 100%. And it's not just being sensitive. People assault and harass women, scold you, etc. I was very lucky to look Egyptian, according to them, while I was there, and still, it didn't help much. Japan serves as a tourist attraction, but to live there is the worst. You will always be a foreigner, not another local, and the treatment will be like that. Honestly, it is a country I visited once on a New Year's tour, but it left me with that feeling that they only live by and for themselves. They are very closed off, and the best thing is that they don't want nor are they interested in having to make a life with foreigners. That fantasy of the average otaku about how great it is an absurd cliché. It simply remains as a tourist attraction, but to live or work there, not even in dreams. I don't want to put up with that. Probably North Korea. You can enter, but you have to follow a guided tour and they watch you closely all the time. And God forbid you do something that puts you on a list or something. Not to mention that the tour guide gives you a bunch of completely false data that you can't refute unless you want to be disappeared. Unless you just want to experience a dystopian society, I don't see why bother. Fiji. Unless you are extremely rich and stay on a private island, the resorts are of poor quality and the poverty is overwhelming and depressing. Due to a flight delay, the airport put us up in a hotel covered in rat droppings. A guy took us in his private car. We took one look and asked him to take us back. We immediately slept at the airport with everyone else who surely already knew. Prague. Beautiful city from top to bottom, but the locals absolutely hate foreigners. I got lost at one point and wanted to find a train station. It was 5 minutes from where I was, but I couldn't see it. After asking more than 10 locals and receiving only snorts and huffs, even asking shopkeepers, etc., an elderly Asian couple running a Chinese restaurant were the only ones who took 2 minutes to point me to the station, and that was just one interaction. I have been pushed off the train several times. I wasn't served at all in several restaurants I tried and ended up going to McDonald's because it was a very unpleasant experience. The food was great, but I couldn't enjoy a meal with the entire restaurant, the staff, and everyone else giving me dirty looks. It gave me the feeling that they expect tourists to stay in tourist traps and away from local places. I felt extremely unwelcome, and they can't pay me to go back. I had a bad experience in Paris. I am dark-skinned, and I'm not good at French. An unknown woman started screaming a bunch of nasty things at me on the metro. I'm from New York. So it's not strange for me to encounter nasty people on the train, and believe me, I'm not saying Paris or France in general are like that, but it left such a bad taste in my mouth that I would need several years and to master the language to feel the slightest interest in returning. I admit I was a bit of a tourist, but that made me so nervous that I was on tiptoes the rest of the trip. I think it was mainly due to the fact that the people in my car didn't even react, something I wasn't used to. My experience in New York is that at least someone would look at you like saying, man, this is crazy. It's probably just a cultural difference, one day, maybe. Bali. I went for the first time at Christmas at age 30. My friends convinced me to join them and told me it would be fun. It was absolute misery, dirty, smelly. Even that nice place we were in was nothing more than piles and piles of trash, stray dogs, and children whose parents forced them to beg. It was really sad, and I felt terrible, as I was contributing to over-tourism and the deterioration of the island's nature. The people are beautiful and very kind, but I felt very guilty having to tend to myself like a crazy person. I left a week early. I hope I never have to return to Jordan. I am a 60-year-old woman, and about 4 years ago I was traveling with another woman my age. We were very excited to see Petra and learn about their culture. Instead, we had more than one sexist guide who was verbally opposed to the West and Europe. Well, I understand the politics, no doubt. However, according to one guide, we American and European women are responsible for men becoming gay, and Jordanian men never were until they saw those things on American and European television. Oh, and another one, we are dirty because we have dogs in the house. Another said he would never let his wife wear makeup. We wore makeup and were traveling just 2 female friends. Anyway, the food is terrible. Their national dish is some junk called mansaf. It tastes as if an old sheep had been simmered in low-quality yogurt for 2 days. After that, I met some very nice Palestinians in Hebron. They invited me to lunch at their house, and I was impressed with the delicious food. I told them I had just arrived from Jordan, and they laughed and said everyone agreed that Jordanian food was junk. Portugal. Some people were quite kind, but the country is economically in crisis. The minimum wage is around €870, but rent in Lisbon starts at about €1,000 a month. In Porto, the situation isn't much better. Only those who live there enjoy their fortune from abroad and the rich. Common jobs, even the best ones, don't allow living well, they simply survive at the lowest level. Unless you have your own business, a real estate property, or an extraordinary job there, you will be poor. Thailand, the only country where I suffered food poisoning. The food itself has a much more basic flavor profile than I expected. A very smiling culture, but people are not very helpful when it comes to important information, for example, about safety on hikes and roads. Simple street scams don't really exist. Instead, there are higher-level scams whose goal is to get more money out of you. I'm glad I visited once, but I don't see myself returning. Although I must say that massages in Thailand are top-notch. Dominican Republic. I went there in 2016. For context, I have traveled through Mexico and been to Havana, Cuba. I never felt uncomfortable in either country, but the Dominican Republic was something special. The male staff at the resort and the item vendors on the beach constantly looked at my sister and me as if we were a piece of meat. They also said creepy things to our faces. Honestly, I would never go back and would recommend people avoid the place. Anyway, the nature isn't anything out of this world. Well, I wouldn't say, never again. I would like to give it another chance, but Denmark was quite disappointing. Truthfully, the weather was horrible. There weren't many historical or interesting museums, everything was super expensive. I didn't find many interesting activities. The food was average, and most people weren't very kind, with some exceptions. I remind you this was in February 2013. Many things have changed since then, so maybe I should visit again perhaps in another month of the year. And thank you very much for watching the video, friends. Remember, you can comment stories you have regarding this question and comment which was the story that impacted you the most. Remember to leave your like, subscribe, comment, and share the video so YouTube recommends it to more people.